And then
If
alternate.
it's not one thing, it's
That's what I.
These things that are
Okay, I would like to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, August 22nd, 2013, 5:30 p.m. Our location is going to be minus one.
Larry, that's a prayer, please. Lord, thank you for bringing us into this day, here together and healthy, productive. As this council meets to discuss the budget, guide them in their thoughts, guide their hands, give them the wisdom to make the decisions that are important and appropriate for the city. Guide us all, take care of us all. Thank you.
Okay, we have established a quorum. Councilman Morones, Councilman Guerrero, Councilman Castillo, Councilman Miller. Mr. Miller. Eric. Okay, now will everyone stand for the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance and Texas pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the Texas flag,
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
At this time, do we have any citizens' comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Thomas.
Jim Lawhon, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm not here to criticize or anything else. I just have some thoughts that I would like to pass along for you to consider as you go through this process. I think we all know that given the financial situation of the city, that increased tax rates are going to be necessary. But you're looking at the budget process now, and the city of Floresville is a business, and I would like for you to look at it as a business, or even look at it like you do at home when you take care of your own budgets. And that is, if I've got money, I buy the stuff that I want and that I need. But right now, we don't have money. So I'm asking you to take a look at this budget in terms of what do we need to keep the city running for the next 12 months. And then I'm asking you to consider modifying our budget process so that we're not just doing it on an annual basis. We need a longer-term look at what our needs are. We need a 3 or 5 year budget plan, primarily because looking at in business, like I'm in an IT department, we look at the life cycle on our computers, and we plan a certain number of computers that have to be replaced every year, and that's in our budget. Software, anything else that we do, we have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen over a period of time, and we don't just think about it in this year's budget, but we think about out year budgets as well. So do what you got to do to take care of keeping the place in business, and there are things that need to be done over time that they may not need to be done this year. Look at them over time and think about them over time.
I'll add that I think the council realized what you are recommending in the longer-term budget cycle. When we look at our insolvency plan, that clearly dictates that we're going to go through a minimum of a 3-year look at the budget. It wasn't practical to implement in this, or completely implement in this budget cycle, but within the next 2 years, that is one of the metrics that exists within our insolvency plan.
Talked a little bit about cemeteries last time. I used to be shooting friends of them. I think out there, a lot of progress has been done, but there's a lot of wasted water. And Reggie, I'll give you, we'll make a run next week. And cemetery number 2 is the African American cemetery. It's really an embarrassment. We need to have high priority on that. Put up a chain link fence and get some water there. Part of the chain link fence might be okay there. On one side, they're raising fighting roosters on the other side. I think, as far as I believe we can get some good volunteers. I want to concentrate on HCV and McCoys on stuff like getting flags and things like that. And, you know, we can get the volunteers interested. And I think the start is when they see that fence up down at the city center, so I think the Boy Scouts will be actually trying to get a troop there, and then churches, just any church need to adopt a certain cemetery. So hopefully we can get into that. I tried it before with not much luck, but I want to get it first. Thank you.
I can tell you, in the budget that I've seen, this draft budget, that some of the assets of the cemetery fund are being utilized for capital improvements. As I look at this draft budget, there's about 51, almost a little over $51,000 being spent on the cemeteries in the next fiscal year on capital improvements. And this isn't coming out of the general fund. This exists within the cemetery fund, who at current has got about $92,000 in it. So they have listened to the council and city staff have listened to your constant updates on the cemetery. As we go through this in the next couple of days, we'll learn what those specific improvements are. But there is some money set aside in this budget for the cemetery.
Yeah. Well, I tried to get it ready this week, but it's too much going on. So I'll call you Monday.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's start.
I think we're gonna have a presentation by the police department first. Okay. Well, last week, since I didn't have a cool pointer, and the city didn't have one, so I went out yesterday and I bought me this cool flashlight. It's a 3-in-1. It's got the blue light on it, it's got the regular flashlight, and it's got the pointer. So I thought I did pretty good on that. Please forgive me this presentation I put together on a moment's notice. I think the mayor called me Wednesday, and so I've been tracking down data and putting together stuff, and I just completed it right at 5 o'clock. So I wasn't able to make copies to pass around to everybody like I did last week. What I want to do is I want to go over, we're going to cover the personnel issues for the upcoming budget. We've asked for 3 additional police officers, and we'll go through each slide and I'll explain our reasons behind it. First of all, we put the department flow chart in here. Currently, we have 1 chief, we have 2 lieutenants, we have 2 sergeants, and 8 patrol officers. Some of the others, generals, we have 2 non-paid reserve officers at this point. We have 1 warrant officer that's only part-time, and 4 bailiffs that are non-paid, and 2 detectives. Next slide. One of the things I did was I went and I pulled statistics, and I found that the Bureau of Justice Statistics in 2010 reported that there should be 2.5 patrol officers for every 1,000 residents within the city. And what they did was they defined a patrol officer as the officer who was responsible for responding to calls for service, doing traffic tickets. This didn't include detectives and it didn't include administration. It simply included the patrol officer. Our 2006 census showed us at 7,250. If we were to meet that ratio right now, we would have to have 17.5 officers. Currently, we only have 10. I did some comparisons to other agencies that were roughly our size and that would have, and what I tried to strive for was to find areas that had been affected with growth in the Eagle Ford Shell area. And so I've listed them by agency population, the number of patrol officers. Again, this doesn't include, it includes the sergeants, but it doesn't include administrative staff or detectives. First one I looked at was Pleasanton, 11,400. They had 18 officers and they're adding 2 more to this budget. Gonzales has 8,000, they have 13 officers, they're adding 4 more to this budget. Kennedy has 5,000 population, they have 7 officers, they're adding 2 more to this budget. Hondo has 8,000, 14 officers, they're not adding anything to this budget. And he told me the reason why was because 2 years ago he got 2 officers. So he was holding off. Cuero, 6,700, they have 12 officers. The chief there told me he's not adding anything because 6 months ago the council went ahead and gave him 2 officers. And so he already has 2 additional officers. And like I said, here we are at Floresville and we're asking for 3. That's fine.
Now, are those done deals,
Yes, according to the chiefs.
or is that what they're requesting?
According to the chiefs, because they're behind on manpower. So, I talked to each chief from each department.
So their budget has been approved and they've already gotten their added officers?
I asked, what were you asking for and how likely did you think you were gonna get it? And every chief told me he was sure they were getting that number.
How about like Poth, Kennedy, Poth and Kearney City and,
I didn't include them because I actually looked like at Karnes County, they're adding 13 officers this year. I heard today, Karnes County's not adding officers, but they've raised their starting salary to $18 an hour. So, I didn't want to get into that. And Karnes City's still a little bit smaller than this, I think they're still right about 3,000 or so. I went back, and I can honestly say from 2007 to 2012, we have only added 1 additional officer to our department. And that was without digging. If I went back, I'm pretty sure we haven't really added any additional personnel since 2011, or right at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, when we hired Officer Billy Mitchell. Okay. The reason for this, behind this, and why we're requesting 3, is because there was an impact study done by UTSA, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. But what they did was they looked at the Eagle Ford Shell area, the 14 county area, and what they found was that, of course, there's a large increase for housing and hotels. Workers will fill the hotels. Most of the workers are staying there for months at a time. And one of the things that I read about that, and I did put this on here, but I thought it kind of fascinating, it said that a lot of these transit workers like living in the motels better than renting a house, because they do move around quite a bit sometimes in the area. Of course, there's growth in RV parks, and there's additional RV parks added to cities, and this is going to increase the populations to cities. I tried to find someone to give me an estimate of what they thought the estimated population of Floresville was with the growth, and I was talking to a lady from the workforce center, but I couldn't get those numbers by the time 5 o'clock. Of course, here in Floresville, we've already seen the effects of it, In 2010, we only had 2 hotels. Now currently, we have 8 hotels. Our existing RV parks have grown. They've added more RV spaces, and of course, we've had additional RV parks created. And all this has added to an overall increase in our population. What I did was, I went back and I wanted to show you all the yearly comparisons of our productivity. And what we did is we defined things into stops, which a stop includes a ticket or a warning. We're not saying tickets, warnings, we're just saying it's a stop. We also, reports is a call for service. Anytime an officer's been called out for a call for service, we count that as a report. So going back to 2009, 2010 comparison chart, if you look at 2009, we had 2,442 compared to 2010 with the 2510, which was only a 2.7% increase. Reports was only a 0.55% increase, and which the total of both of those combined was really only a 1.54 increase. When we go to 2010 and compare 10 to 11, you see that we got, again, small number 1.15. Reports, however, went up 6.52 with just an overall of 3.36. But now when we compare 2011 to 2012, our stops went up 77%. And that's due to the increased traffic. On reports, it went up 16% on calls for service with a total of 43%. Accidents, we started tracking accidents. In 2009, there were 181 accidents. 2010, the 199. We actually went down in 2011. We came back up to the 182 in 2012. And this is where we stand right now, 91 accidents just for, and this goes from January to the end of July. So we're at the halfway mark already, at the halfway part of the year. So if we continue on this track, we're probably going to reach this number higher. I went ahead and I pulled some records from VPS that they had on the Eagle Ford Shell. And one of the things, this was total crash they worked. This green line here, this represents the 6 plus counties, Wilson included. And you can see just from 2011 to 2012, how much of an increase it was on accidents in these counties. Okay. This is total crashes that involve commercial vehicles. Again, look at the comparison to 2012, 2011.
Now, was that, those accidents within the city?
No,
Not
no,
within
that's
the
14
city.
counties.
This is within the 14 counties. Just showing a traffic increase. And I don't know if you know, DPS saw a need because of in that 14 counties, they created that special task force now. I think there's 5 troopers that are assigned to the counties, and all they do is ride around and stop commercial vehicles, trying to limit the accidents. I found out, I have a friend of mine who's a trooper in San Antonio, and he was telling me the other day that they pay the troopers in Karnes County $500 extra a month to work in Karnes County. But nobody will take the job. There are 3 short down there. And I said, why wouldn't they take the job? Because he said 90% of the accidents in Karnes County are commercial vehicles. And of those 90, there's usually 3 or 4 fatalities. And the troopers, they don't want to be working. This was, I just found this, I thought it was kind of neat, but this was commercial driver's license exams that were given for these areas. With Gonzales, it just shows how they went up from 2011 to 2012. But what got me was the San Antonio area. And this covered, it says San Antonio in the southeast, so I'm assuming this included us. Thank you very much. Like I said, it was a short presentation, and I'll try to answer any questions if I
Do
can.
you have any chart where it shows about the crime, anything on the crime? I mean, has crime come up or?
That's why I showed you on calls for reports. Report is every individual call for service.
Some of it is just,
Yeah, there's a comparison. I don't have the numbers with me, but we separate calls from miscellaneous incidents to what we consider offenses. And a miscellaneous incident is typically everything from a vehicle unlock to an alarm call. And usually that's the number, and that's why I showed you the number of reports has increased, because typically both categories, miscellaneous incidences and offense, continue to rise. but it usually seems like the incidences are more than the offenses. And that's strictly because there's, for a good example, McCoy's, when they opened up, I think we were averaging 5 alarm calls there a day. So it's always typical higher with your miscellaneous incidents.
That second lieutenant you had off to the side here, what does he do?
It's special assignment.
Special
What's that?
assignment.
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it.
He's been reassigned to another department, another agency. While he's reassigned to that other agency, any benefits that they reap from his activities over in that agency will benefit the city of Floresville.
Well, is that agency paying his salary and benefits?
No, the city
No,
of
the
Floresville
city still
continues.
pays it.
City of Floresville's paying. Do we have any kind of data that says this has been profitable or not to the city?
Jim, to be honest with you, he just started.
Okay.
He just started 5 months ago.
At best.
So we don't know.
I don't even think it was fine.
And
Is
and
this
I'm gonna be honest with you, I was told by the previous city manager that we weren't to discuss this.
Okay. Well, I've got some questions and some statements on this, Chad. One, I'm familiar with the reassignment. I don't know that we can talk about it. I don't care. The rumor I heard on this, for what it's worth, is that this was an assignment to the drug task force. Okay? My opinion is that if we have the resources to assign officers to other duty, where we may or may not see a return, and then in the same hand say we don't have enough officers to do the job, something seems in conflict. That's just my perception. I appreciate your statistics. I appreciate comparing ourselves to other towns, okay? But I come back to what my mother told me as a young boy and said, if everybody else was going to go jump off the cliff, would you do it? So I appreciate that. But our responsibility as a city council in deciding how we're going to allocate the resources of the citizens is to, one, provide public safety. So I'm all for that. So the question that I'm going to ask is, what are we not doing today that we need to do because we don't have these 3 police officers?
Well, Jim, I'll be honest with you, the guys that we have working now, I mean, you can see just in the increase in the traffic stops and the increase in productivity as far as the reports go, we're working with a skeleton crew, basically. And when we talk about, and I can understand what you're talking about, moving him to narcotics, but what I'm telling you, that's a totally different ballgame when you talk about responding to crimes as far as, answering the calls, investigations, compared to narcotics. Prior to him or to the task force, we don't have the manpower it takes to work narcotics. And so that was one area that we fell short on.
So can you pull up that first slide, his organizational chart, please?
He does still work narcotics cases in our area as well.
Okay. But what I'm getting at here, okay, is, and let's come to this order, if you can pull it up. Go to the file folder at the bottom left there next to the start. Unless we're seeing a return on our investment of equal to our investment of the salary of a top lieutenant and the benefits that we pay a top lieutenant, okay, we cannot in the same breath say we need more officers, okay? If we're so top heavy in our police department that we can afford to send an officer to another organization, okay, without a benefit to the police department, without a benefit to the city equal to what we're spending on it, we don't need to be doing. Particularly when you're saying we don't have enough on-the-ground officers. Maybe before we start looking at adding police officers, we need to look at our organizational structure to say that we're using the assets that we have in place appropriately. That's the question I have about this. And I appreciate your statistics, Chad, and I appreciate the data, and I appreciate that, yeah, we're operating on a skeleton crew. But the other thing that this council has to consider is this is a city that was labeled insolvent. This is a city that had to develop an insolvency plan. This is a city that's going to have to raise tax rates. In 6 days is going to have to stand out there and justify every damn dime that we're putting into this budget. And if the citizens know that we have the resources to send a high officer, number 2 or number 3 officer in our police department, to another agency without an equal return to the city, they're going to crucify us. And then we turn around and hire more police officers. We need to address that first. Okay? It is the piece that I'm going to say on this. Do we need police officers? We may very well. But I cannot, with any conscience whatsoever, authorize hiring another police officer with that special assignment. Unless we know, unless we have some information that says, well, the task force is investigating narcotics in the city of Floresville, or we're getting this benefit in return. And if we have to discuss this because of privacy issues or confidentiality issues in executive session, I'm all for that. But we cannot, with any conscience, say, we're going to hire more police officers, but we're going to send our top lieutenant to another organization.
You have to
Okay.
explain to people that one of our officers is working for another agency or whatever, without us knowing what the return is. Okay? I don't know who authorized that, because this is the first time that I hear of this. But, again, I'm agreeing with Jim that it's hard to say that we need officers and explain it to the public when we have this officer here being paid by the city, not by this other agency, am I correct? And then us not knowing whether we're getting a return.
Why aren't they paying it?
So I don't know anything about that. I just know we're working on it.
Well, we're going to have another budget workshop on Monday. I think between you, the chief, and the city manager, we can get some answers to that
But
before we
Jim,
find.
I can tell you, to my knowledge, so far, there hasn't been a return, because when you're talking about working on all these big drug cases, it's not a month-long thing.
Well, I
mean,
understand.
It's several months, so like I said, he's only been there 5 months, so I wouldn't believe that there's any return as of yet.
Okay,
If you
well,
want
what's
a
the?
number, ask me that again next year, and I could tell you, over the course of a year, he's brought back in X number of dollars.
Well, we can, just as you were able to pull up the data on numbers of police officers, we should be able to generate data.
I can tell you now, one of the things that's helping us is that last week, DPS Narcotics stopped a vehicle in Atascosa County that's a fairly decent pickup truck. DPS doesn't seize property. He happened to be in there, he talked to DPS and said, if y'all don't want it, can we seize it? They said, yes. He called the district attorney's office. District attorney's office said, yes, file the paperwork. So that truck's sitting behind the police department right now, it's going through seizure paperwork. And if we get that pickup, since it's a fairly new pickup, we can use that vehicle in the police department and save on some of the other vehicles.
I appreciate that, Chad. I appreciate that there is some potential. What I would like to know is, what is the potential? And there are other officers that have been with this task force for years. What are other departments seeing for the return on their investment? I'm not asking for the answers to.
The chief can answer that better, because he's the one that developed the program, but I know that he had told me several months ago that Live Oak Police Department, their one officer had brought in over $100,000 a year.
Again, I appreciate anecdotal data for one police officer, okay? But let's go back and look at this from a realistic point of view. What is the average return to the departments that are contributing officers to this? Yeah, granted, we could get $100,000, that's a possibility. I could win the lottery, that is a possibility. What is the likelihood of me winning the lottery? So what I'm asking you to do is get with the city manager, the chief, and come back to this council with some data about this, so that we as a council can say, yes, this is a good investment or not, and then we can address the issue of additional police officers. Okay? I'm not saying no. I'm saying give us the data or the information so we can make an educated decision. Okay? I was not here on the police car piece. Okay? And I want to talk a little bit about that and ask you also to get with the city manager and the police chief and come back to this council with a different plan. one of the, and Mr. Lawhon talked about this earlier, and this is addressed in our insolvency plan. And the city manager and I talked about what some other cities do. I appreciate the need to replace vehicles. This is going to be a constant need for a police department. I appreciate the need to add officers. As we grow, by some estimations, this city could be 15,000 people in the next 5 years. Okay, if you look at the master plan and some of their M&S's engineering's assumptions, that's going to make a big need for police officers. It's going to make a big need for vehicles. We need a long-term plan on how we're going to add personnel. We need a long-term plan on how we're going to maintain vehicles. Doesn't mean we buy 6 vehicles in one whack. Doesn't mean we buy one vehicle at the beginning of the year, one vehicle at the end of the year, and put that as a line item in a budget, so every year we're replacing 2 vehicles. And then the question I'm going to ask, is it better to buy it, is it better to lease it? What are our options, okay, as a council? Could we get by with maybe buying 1 vehicle this year and 1 next year, and then in the out years start planning to do 2 a year? I don't know the answer. I don't know what the needs are. But what I would like to see from the police department is a longer term plan, so that every year we don't have to sit here and discuss, do we buy police cars? That it, just in the same way we don't discuss collective bargaining, or we don't discuss an administrative assistant or a clerk in the office, but we've already planned for these things so that they're included in the cost of doing business. And that's what we really need to do when it comes to vehicles. It's what we really need to do when it comes to equipment. If we're going to consider vehicles in this budget cycle, okay, we need to look at some kind of plan, and we need to have some options on it to say yay or nay. The third piece I will say about, I've got 4 items on the police department budget. I told the city manager when I met with him and the mayor, and we were going over this budget, to remove CopSync from the budget. Why did I say that? Okay, we were presented in this council a presentation on something similar to CopSync. It was called something else at the time, and the council asked a number of questions, and they weren't able to be answered. So the topic got tabled, and the police department said they would come back to the council and re-present it. I became very offended when I looked through the budget to find it in this budget, because it had not come back to the council. Granted, we are using, for the first payment of 3 or 4 payments, monies from the technology fund and monies from the seizures fund. But we do not address in this budget how we're going to make the subsequent payments. We simply say, hopefully we'll get enough money in seizures to cover that. But ultimately, we're obligating the general fund for it. Okay? So it is for that reason I said remove it from the budget. The second, and the supporting reason to that, okay, is it doesn't matter how many computers we have, Chad, if we don't have the police cars to put them in. And it doesn't matter how many police cars we have if we don't have the police officers to put them in. And we are in a budget crisis right now, okay, this city. We're growing. We've got some huge infrastructure challenges, okay. A lot of things have not been addressed for years and years and years. And now we've got, if you look at this sheet, $650,000 worth of things that we got to address. And that's only some of them. That doesn't even talk about some major capital improvements that we need to do. This doesn't talk about the streets. So we're going to have to pick and choose based on a priority basis. You know, do we hire 1 police officer? Do we buy 1 vehicle this year? We need to see this information in a priority manner, okay? And we need to be given options. So what I'm going to ask, very respectfully, you know, is that the police department staff with the city staff go back and look at their requests. We look at this organizational chart and come back to this council with ideas that we can do to meet the needs of providing public safety, okay, without bankrupting the taxpayers. If you look at the front page of the newspaper,
The newspaper came out Tuesday afternoon and ended up in people's mailboxes Wednesday morning. I have been fending phone calls 24 hours a day since that newspaper hit. Because it says 46% increase in taxes. Okay, granted, it's only a record vote, but the citizens are outraged. You know, we see what happened at the county level. Hey, we want to issue $8.5 million worth of certificates of obligation. We're going to do all of these things. We're not even going to raise your taxes, but we're going to pay for it with your taxes.
Right.
The citizens were outraged. I wasn't even here. I was out of the country. And you read the newspaper headlines that the citizens said no. And I went to a emergency budget meeting for the commissioners court. Because the citizens removed this from their budget, their effective tax rate dropped or the rollback tax rate dropped so low that they had to scrap everything in that budget. They had to remove any additional personnel. They had to remove all raises. They eliminated all capital improvements in order to get below the rollback tax rate because they didn't have the INS to support it. We've got hard decisions we got to make. Help us make those decisions with options and being informed about stuff like this. Because this is going to be a hard sell.
Okay, well, I'll get with the chief and we'll get with Reggie next week.
Chad, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand the special assignment and the questions, and that is an issue. The 3 officers that you were asking, where would they be utilized? On
To be honest with you, if it was me as the chief of police, to be honest, we run 2 shifts. I would put 2 officers, 1 on each shift, and I would promote 1 to detective. I currently got 2 detectives, and they're swamped nonstop, plus on the other assignments I got on top of them. And I need at least 1 more detective.
Okay, and then my other question is, the lieutenant that's assigned on this special assignment, what duties are not being done right now because he's not?
None, I'm doing them all.
So you're doubling.
You raised an interesting point there when you said if you were the chief, this is how you would do that. If we hired 3 additional patrol officers and you promoted 1 to detective,
That's not promotion, so it's a lateral move.
it's a lateral move, it's no change in pay.
No change. Well, it's a $200 stipend.
So we're actually looking at more cost then. So as we come back to the council to say, hey, here are our priorities, here are your options. Let's make sure we're not losing any of those kinds of details in here because it's those kinds of surprises that can make for big hiccups.
Well, Jim, I'm just gonna say this, I've been a police officer 23 years, 21 of them have been here at the city. And I can tell you that from 20 years ago, we were behind on the curve as far as officers and equipment, because for years, we've never asked for anything. We never asked for officers, we never asked for equipment, because it was fearful that we wouldn't get that 3% or 5% raise that was coming. So we've been behind the curve for years. The problem is with showing you the numbers on the increase of calls and everything else, my guys, those 8 guys out there working are busting their butt. And we're trying to figure out, and like you said, you can move Lieutenant Evans back, but it's still not gonna make that big of a difference as to what.
Well, what I'm suggesting.
The problem is where I need the manpower is the 8 patrol officers.
Well, here's what I'm suggesting is the problem. You said, the mayor said, because asked you the question, what's not being done because the lieutenant's on special assignment? You said nothing. So we really then don't need that position. We could take the dollars that we're spending there and hire patrol.
No, he said that he was
He's
picking up.
taking all the
I understand. You're taking all of the responsibility. So the job's getting done. Here's the nut we got to crack, Chad. I respect everything you've said, and I believe everything you say about the need and people being overworked. But as we sit through this process, I'm going to listen to what's going on at the sewer plant. And they're going to say, hey, we're not going to be able to flush toilets in this town, or we're not going to be able to process sewer. You need to do this, this, and this. I'm going to listen to the Public Works Department say, hey, we're not going to be able to get water to customers if we don't do this. Hey, we've got a street that we're going to have to close if we don't do this. I don't have a big purse to deal with. So I'm not trying to be the hard guy in this one.
I understand.
And it's been ignored for years for whatever reason. We are working to put this city on a path just like I said, give me a plan for the police officers, give me a plan for the police vehicles. We may not be able to do it all this year, we may be not able to do it all in the next 3 years, but at least we have something that we're working towards, that this council and future councils can use as a roadmap when they're looking at dollars and when dollars become available to do things and when grants become available to do things, instead of not knowing what we're gonna do with it. You know, we ended up this year with an excess of some personnel dollars, and we needed to address it. And because we didn't have any shovel-ready projects, some of that money got pushed forward. Okay? Let's get the projects ready, let's develop the plans so that we can move forward, get your department forward, get our roads fixed, be able to do the things that a city is supposed to do. And as I said in the very beginning, our responsibility before we do anything is to ensure public safety, to ensure that we have roads for our citizens to drive on, and ensure that they have the utilities, that they've got water, sewer, and garbage. Everything else is extra. Okay? And when we're gonna stand up in front of them and say, we're gonna raise your rates 46%, we better be damn sure why we're doing it.
I agree with you 100%.
Thank you, Shaq.
Okay, anyone, there's always out there, you want to talk about the water tank and everything.
Being here,
Here.
on the agenda.
Huh?
It's here.
That's it?
Okay, we,
On the agenda, it's on the agenda.
Oh, it's on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's out there.
Okay. We have some critical projects that need to be completed, and we need to move forward. As you guys know,
Andrew, can I ask you to stand so everybody can hear you, please?
as everyone knows here, a lot of the equipment here has been installed in the 70s, so 40 years old. In the wastewater side, I'm going to start first. We have a lift station that this city incurred. I don't know why it incurred. It was in a private sector, and we accepted responsibility. The lift station right now is in a 4D mobile home. It's completely fallen apart. It's down to one motor and it's leaking. The other motor is broke. This is the one that we have said in other workshops that we need to take care of that. Because if this goes down, we either have two things to do. Let the sewage spill out of the wet well down to the road, or get a vacuum truck that's gonna cost us $750 a day to keep sucking the sewage out until this thing gets fixed. I'm asking you, we need to move forward to fix this. And if you're looking for dollar signs, Jim, it's 17,000.
No, I saw it, it's already in the budget.
Okay.
It's
So
a
we need.
budget amendment.
Yes.
It was in the budget amendment. It was one of the items.
So it's
there.
funded.
We were told, do you have the minutes? We were told that the capital, we had to come back and get prioritization from council when the motion was made for the budget amendment. And
On the dollar amount?
I believe on priority of those items.
Okay.
I believe that's in the minutes.
Well, okay, I missed that.
And it was concern of the time frame that we weren't sure we'd be able to do that in 2 months.
Well, let me ask this question. I was not present when that budget amendment came across. And I was present when we had a budget workshop.
So keep that, that's the
Okay,
current
that's the
one.
date. And we said, okay, yeah, we have some excess personnel dollars. And you were here, and you said, come back. We asked you to come back to the council with this budget amendment, okay, with the priorities of the things that needed to be done, okay? And for city staff to say, yep, this is a priority. If this is a priority, it's a no-brainer. We've got the dollars to do it, let's do it. It certainly doesn't make any sense.
But we were asked to bring them all back because we did not have bids on every single one of them. And we were requested with the budget amendment passing.
But since then, it hasn't come back.
Okay, well,
We
then,
have not gotten all of the quotes, unfortunately, so.
Well, but we can
could still be
execute
bringing-
pro-
We could still be bringing back the incomplete list.
Yeah.
Lou, can we execute project by project on this, or do we have to
And
wait?
they're, most of these are general maintenance, they're not, they're not capital.
Well, what I'm suggesting is the following. If we can approve this stuff on a project-by-project basis, we know we have the dollars, we know we're gonna have a budget workshop on Monday. Let's add to that budget workshop on Monday a special city council meeting to take action on this budget amendment to authorize the expenditure of the dollars, so that we can execute this. You know, I understand, we sat in this room, this council, on that date and listened to the projects that you said, and we said, we know we have these kinds of dollars, and that was the purpose of the budget amendment, was to enable you to do that. So if we have to, I don't know why we would have to, other than just to be informed as to, here are the priorities, here are the dollar amounts that the budget amendment authorized.
Which will be asked for in the budget, at the very beginning of it said.
Okay.
We unfortunately couldn't bring back all of these. We have the ability to have 28,000 to do them as we can do them, and we were told we needed to bring back a list, so.
Do we, can it be by memo format to the council because the budget amendment's already approved?
Now it's in the budget.
It's already amended, right?
Right.
But if the verbiage was,
I have the minutes here, and from the July 11th meeting, basically, the amendment was brought back, it was passed, but at the end of it, it said Councilman Rodriguez asked that more solid numbers be brought back to the council.
for cap.
For the capital improvements.
For capital improvements, and that put a freeze on the whole thing. So
Does
nobody
that
has-
require an
nobody
action,
has
or
moved
does that
forward.
require?
I'm reading that requires it to come back to you for you to approve.
Okay, then do it for Monday. Do it for Monday.
I won't be here.
Well,
Well, let me ask
you don't need to be here for Monday.
Well, then, am I getting approval to move forward tomorrow and start getting things lined up?
No,
No.
not on my workshop.
Well, see,
I already
here's
gave you-
my issue. We're down to one pump, and this pump is leaking. If this thing breaks, then I'm gonna have to go to what?
Let me ask this question.
Okay,
Do we have dollars in this year's budget that have not been spent that are entitled repairs and maintenance?
Or this is in its own line item, it's in 17,000, yes, it's
Okay, no,
in the budget amendment.
okay. Not that budget amendment. I'm looking for other dollars someplace else to do this. One, the city charter says that the city manager, at his discretion, can move funds from one fund to another fund without council approval, so long as he's within the budget. What I'm suggesting is you find $17,000, fund this project today, we approve the budget amendment on Monday, and you put the dollars back. It's not that hard. We'll go through the procedural
I think
piece of,
Mr. Winters approved that.
I approved it the other day for them to go ahead and start
And we
fixing
had
that.
that cost.
But it's a health and safety issue.
execute. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We'll go backwards and approve the budget
That
amendment.
one's a done.
So we're,
Okay.
it's a done deal.
That's a no-brainer. Any of those things that you presented in there, what we said to you guys in that meeting was, we've got this much money. Don't have any more. You've got this much money. Go out and decide what has to be done, what the priority is, and do it. On Monday, let's just dot the i's and cross the t's. But as far as coming back to us and say this is an emergency or this is an emergency, I think this entire council believes everything that you're gonna say, and when it comes to what is a priority, we trust you guys to do that, working with the office of the city manager. I think that was clear in that budget workshop.
Council version of free spending, I think. Wasn't there a council directive to free spending? I mean, that's part of our.
Except for, well, there was a council directive to freeze spending on anything but essential city services, okay, at the discretion of the city manager, correct? That was the council directive. We know that the essential city services are public safety, roads, water, sewer, refuse. Public safety falls under the health. This is a no-brainer, guys. Let's execute this. You got the money, Andrew? Get with Laura what the dollars are about. that are in the budget amendment. We knew what the dollar
He
amount was.
worked on it with me. He
Yeah.
knows.
So Monday we'll dot the i's and cross the t's, but you're the supervisor there. You know, you and Rudy are saying, hey, this is what we need to do. I don't think we need to go through the song and dance of this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed. Execute.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay, we have, other emergencies that are coming up, and it's on the water side. Okay, Rudy brought to my attention, the storage tank that we have in Plaza is in bad shape. T-SAC.
Johnny saw it.
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
T-SAC came and said what? You just brought me up.
Yeah,
to
they,
speak on that.
They inspected it last year, and we promised them it would be addressed this year. So it's time, if they come back, it's not addressed, we might leave them.
Understood.
Write up or fine,
Understood.
whatever.
Understood. And as we go through this budget process, I know there's some dollars that are identified for the water tower project, okay? There are some other dollars that are identified for other projects. There are a lot of things we gotta do. And just as I was telling Chad, we gotta look at them and make some hard decisions as a council.
Well, as things progress, other problems occur there. These are safety issues, the ones I'm gonna bring up on this one.
Okay?
This is on the water side as well, that's on Hospital Boulevard. The ladder and the catwalk that we got, it's a safety issue. You cannot send a man up there and him fall down because it's rotted, and we need to fix that. We have an aerator
Exhaust
blower
fan. Exhaust fan.
that is down on one of the aerators. We need to repair that, but we can't get up there to repair it. So I need the catwalk, the ladder, and I need that blower for that aerator to start again, because we only got one aerator. If that blower stops,